Hello and welcome to our online class of social science. Today I will explain one of the important topic of ninth class history. Topic's name is Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. Dear students, this topic is important topic from NDA written test examination point of view also. In this topic, I will explain all the concepts related to this chapter step by step. Watch this complete video if you want to read this full chapter. Here we have some facts related to this chapter. First of all, you might see Russian Revolution on the top of this slide. Russian Revolution, here it refers. Revolution means when a government or a regime or a social order is overthrown forcibly by a new order. It means when old social order is replaced by a new one. In simple words, we may understand that when any government, whether it is monarchy or dictatorship, is replaced by democratic ideas or in a new social order, it is known as revolution. As we have seen in the beginning of the chapter, chapter's name is beginning with Socialism in Europe. Let me tell you definition of this word socialism. Socialism refers to an economic order in which land and property is under the control of state. You might have heard about capitalism, socialism and mixed economy. In India, we have mixed economy because we have government as well as private property. In capitalism, there is only private property. The ownership is with private industrialists only or private owners only. Whereas in socialism, land and property of the state is under the control of the government. And Russian Revolution. Here about this Russian Revolution we will read in this chapter as it occurred in 1917. It means in the first decades of 20th century, there was a revolution in Russia, one of the largest country in the world. Before 1917, this country had monarchy. Now you will ask me, sir, what is this monarchy? Although in writing it is written monarchy, whereas its pronunciation is monarchy. Meanwhile, rule of a king, rule of an emperor. Before 1917, Russia was ruled by an emperor called Tsar, and his name was Nicholas II. See some another facts. related to this chapter. In Russia, there were two main political groups during the Tsar. One was Mensheviks, which was led by Kerensky. It was a minority group of socialists. And the second was Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov Lenin. It was his full name. It's a bit difficult to learn this name, but you can say Lenin only in shortcut. After Lenin, Stalin ruled in Russia. See the next slide. In this chapter, we are going to read following contents step by step. First is the age of social change. Meanwhile, what was the condition of society in Russia? As I have told you that a revolution means a complete change, or an order is completely changed. So same happened in Russia. Before 1917, there was an old regime. In society, there were three main groups. One is liberals. Here you can see on this slide, it is written in this red color, liberals. Just try to understand this liberal in very simple terminology. In simple words, let's understand liberals. Those who wanted to change the social order. Means liberal, they were the people who wanted to change the social order or the old regime, who were not in favor of kingship, who were not in favor of monarchy. I hope that now this monarchy terminology is clear to you. They wanted a nation which tolerated all religions, meanwhile a secular state. These liberals opposed the uncontrolled power of dynastic rulers. They were not in favor of divine rights. They wanted to safeguard the rights of the individual against the government. Most of the students, they use this word government. That is wrong. Its pronunciation is government. So in simple words, we may say that these were the people who wanted to bring change in society. Although there were some limitations of these liberals, limitations here it refers demerits, that they were not fully democrats. Here it refers that they did not believe in universal adult franchise. I hope you read this universal adult franchise from 6th class onward. Meanwhile, people, those who are 18 years and above, only they have right to vote. Universal adult franchise means right to vote to those who are 18 years and above. These liberals were not democrats, because this is one of the most important characteristics of democracy, that there has to be universal adult franchise. Liberals believed that property means men, those who are having property, or the rich people, only they must be given right to vote. They were not in favor of right to vote to poor people. That is why we can't say them Democrats. I hope that liberals terminology is clear to everyone. Meanwhile, they wanted to bring change in society, but not completely. Coming to our next slide, here you can see another group of society, radicals. These are given in chapter. Radicals. Radical means they wanted a nation in which government was based on majority. Let's understand this radical in simple terms, that those who wanted to change the society, change the old regime, those who were in favor of changes. Meanwhile, they were fully Democrats. They supported women's suffragette movement. Women's suffragette movement, it refers that right to women. Suffrage, this terminology is used for the right to vote. They opposed the privileges of great landowners. They were not in favor of the privileges. Privileges here it refers that benefits or facilities to the owners. They were against the private property in few hands. Meanwhile, in simple terms, they believed in complete change. I hope this radical terminology, let's recapitulate. Radical refers to people who believed in complete change in Russia. Here we have third group of society, conservatives. Conservative, as you all know, that people, those who don't want to change themselves, those who believe that the past had to be respected, those who opposed the idea of change. Meanwhile, they were happy in monarchy or in kingship or in empress rules. Means in Tsar's rule, they were very happy. They didn't want to bring any change. Although with the passage of time, some of these conservatives believed that changes had to be brought, but in a very slow process. They were not in favor of complete change. Let's discuss second part of this chapter, industrial society and social change. When I started this chapter, I told you the definition of the revolution means when an old regime or the old social order is overthrown by the people. When it is overthrown forcibly, then it is called a revolution. For revolution, if you ask me some major causes, reasons, so I will say that there are 5 main reasons for any of the revolution. Number 1 is the political reason. Political, here you have to understand that political refers to the king, to the politics of the country, to the rights of the people. If they are not having rights, they will definitely do revolution against the king. Second is the social order, social causes. In social causes, as I have told you, that condition of the society, as we are discussing about these liberals, radicals, conservatives, these are the social order. Third is economic reasons. Economic reasons, because this is the one of the important reason, that if people of any state, means they are hungry, if they are not getting 2 times food, they will do revolution against their king. The Fourth one is rise of new middle class. Middle class here it refers that new ideas of philosophers, teachers, advocates and middlemen. And the fifth one is any immediate cause. Immediate cause means which may spark the revolution process, which may become a sudden reason. Just like in the previous chapter of French Revolution, we studied the States General Assembly. When it was called, it became a immediate cause. In the same way, in Russia, Bloody Sunday event and the shortage of bread and butter means these defeat of Russia from a tiny nation Japan, that these are some of the immediate causes. So in economic reasons we have discussed that condition of the workers, condition of the society, economic condition of the country. Here we have some evidences here in this slide. What was the condition of this society, especially industrial society? Industrial society refers to that society in which workers and the factory owners means they lived. So we have to discuss about the condition of the workers and the industries that time. So here in the first point you can see it was the time when new cities came up. As you all know, there was an industrialization in Europe in the 18th century, mid of the 18th century, around 1750s and after. So in Europe it spreaded, and till the beginning of 20th century there were many industries in Europe as well as in Russia. Half part is in Asia, half is in Europe. New regions they developed, railways expanded. Industrialization means that brought men and women to the factories. For the work in the factories, industrial owners they hired the labor. Working hours in industries were often long. That time there were no industrial law, no factory laws. Wages were very poor, very less amount was given to the salary, given as a salary to the workers, whereas the working hours were long. There was no limitation of the work. Laborers they had to work for a long hour, even in the nights. Unemployment that was very common, particularly during times of low demand of the industrial good. As you all know that there was industrial crisis. So when there was no demand of any product in Asian and European nations at that time, most of the laborers, workers, they became jobless. Here is the condition of industries, that these were private properties. Although in our country this is not a private property only. Some industries are government industries and some are private. That's why I told you that it is called mixed economy. But before Russian Revolution 1917, all the industries were private property. Liberals and radicals they criticized this private property, and people, meanwhile the laborers, they had no rights to oppose these industrial owners. Even that time strikes were not allowed. That time they could not oppose their owners. It was very difficult for the laborers to work in those conditions. There were no labor laws. There were no consumer rights. They could not do any strike. So This was also one of the reasons of the revolution, that people were unsatisfied. They were frustrated. They were not happy with the Tsar's rule. Here we have next para of this chapter, coming of socialism in Europe. Socialism, if we see that a political and economic theory, it is a theory of social organization which advocates that all the means of production, land, property, that should be regulated by the government or the community as a whole. Means socialist thinkers were against the private property. In simple terms, they believed that there has to be government authority on land and property. Here let me tell you some of the important socialist thinkers. The important socialist thinkers were Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Karl Marx, his theory is called Marxist theory. You might have heard that in most of the countries, some political parties also, they believe in the theory of Karl Marx. Even political parties are named after this Marxist, Communist Party, Marxist parties. So Karl Marx, he believed that the society means has only two groups. One is rich, one is poor, and there is always a conflict between these two groups. One upper group is always enjoying and the lower group is always suffering. In his book Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, means these two famous socialists, they wrote about the condition of the workers. They provoked the feeling of the people for their rights. Another socialist thinkers were Robert Owen. Robert Owen means he was a leading English manufacturer who believed in cooperative community called New Harmony in Indiana. As you can see here, it is written that a cooperative community means where two or more than two people, they can start a business, and the objective of that business is to give benefit to the people in spite of getting benefit themselves. In France, Louis Blanc, he was another socialist thinker who also believed in cooperativism. Many other associations, organizations were formed to support this socialism in different parts of the countries. Here you can see that support for the socialism topic is given in the chapter, in which there was spread of socialist ideas in 1870s by the socialist thinkers. Ultimately the Second International was held. This Second International and First International refers to labor organizations, International Organization of Laborers. As you all know that we are celebrating Labor Day on 1st of May. That is the result of these international organizations, means where rights of workers were specified. In another line you can see that workers in England and Germany, they began forming associations to fight for their better living conditions. They set up some funds to help the members in time of distress and demanded a reduction of working hours and right to vote. Meanwhile, this was the time when they started their demands. Because of these organizations and associations, many socialist parties were formed in different parts of the countries. In Germany, Social Democratic Party SPD that was formed. In another country, Britain, Socialist Party, a Labour Party was formed. In France too, a Socialist Party that was formed. Not only in these countries, after the in India also Socialist Party means that was formed that time, which supported the idea of the socialism. Here we have come to the main event, the Russian Revolution. As I told you that Russia was having monarchy in 1917. Tsar Nicholas II. You might be surprised that what is this Tsar? TSR. Tsar refers to emperor. Nicholas II, he became emperor of Russia in 1914. Russian territories in 1917 were included current-day Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and it has many religions like Christianity, Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, and Buddhists. Overall, we may say in 1917 it was a large nation. As you know that in 1990s Russia got divided into 15 parts, although it is the largest country till date. So in 1917 Tsar Nicholas, he ruled in Russia. That time the condition of Russian society that was not good. Economy and society, this topic we are discussing now. Most of the Russian people means they depended on agriculture, like India. India is also an agricultural country. The same way in the beginning of 20th century Russian people, they also believed in, their livelihood was also agriculture, and some of the prominent industrial areas were St. Petersburg and Moscow. Craftsmen undertook much of the production, but large factories existed alongside craft workshops. In the factories, as I have discussed in the previous paragraph also, that private ownership was there, factory hours were very long, wages were very less to the laborer, workers, they suffered a lot. There was no facility for the factory laborers. They had to work for a long time. Even they were not given any medical facilities. Workers, they could not make any association. There was no facility for their children in the factory site areas. Their livelihood condition, that was also not good in the factories. When you will see this chapter, you will see some of the pictures which are shown, that how the people means they lived in the bunkers, in the dormitories, means where the condition of the people that was not good. On the other hand, Russian peasants, their condition was also not good. They were under the command and control of the commune or the mir, who were the rich people at that time, and peasants were given their land by their commune or mir as per their family needs. Next, we have socialism in Russia. As I told you that for any revolution, these philosophical ideas or the rise of middlemen or the new sentiments, because French Revolution brought the idea of liberty, equality and fraternity. After the French Revolution and the glorious revolution of England, people, they read famous thinkers, they read about Rousseau, they read about Montesquieu, Diderot, Voltaire, they read Declaration of Rights of Men and Citizen, which was passed in France. They came to know about the democratic rights, that how means people can enjoy their freedom, their liberty. In the same way, socialist ideas also came in Russia, though till this revolution period all the political parties were illegal. In spite of these problems and restraints, in Russia, Social Democratic Workers' Party was founded in 1898. This was one of the important party of Russia at that time. This party was supported by socialist thinkers, especially people who believed Karl Marx ideas. So this socialist party, this Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party, later on it was divided into two groups. One, Bolshevik, led by Vladimir Lenin, one of the important name, as this Russian Revolution 1917 is also known as Bolshevik Revolution, because October Revolution, when we will discuss in the later phase about the Feb Revolution and October Revolution, so the hero of the October Revolution was Vladimir Lenin. He believed that the party should be disciplined and should control the number and quality of its members. These people were active in Russia after April 1917. I will tell you why. Because till April 1917, Vladimir Lenin, he was not in Russia, he was exiled. Exiled means he was sent outside the country because of his betrayal or the treason against the king, means his conspiracy against the king. The second group was Menshevik group. They believed that the party should be open to all, and Kerensky was the leader of this Menshevik group. This Menshevik group played an important role in Feb Revolution of Russia. Socialist ideas came in Russia after a passage of time. As I told you, that people, they read famous philosophers and thinkers like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. In the same period, one major incident took place in 1905, that is also called a turbulent time. In 1905, a major event took place which is known as Bloody Sunday event or 1905 revolution. What was this? That in 1905, prices of the goods rose rapidly. Essential goods like bread, butter, vegetables, milk, their prices rose very high. Means people, they were unable to purchase these goods. Ultimately, means they raised their voice in a procession led by Father Gappen, who was the leader of these people. Means in a group they marched towards the Winter Palace. Winter Palace, it was the palace of the Tsar or the Emperor of Russia, Nicholas II. When they marched towards Winter Palace, they were attacked by police. They were attacked by police. The Russian forces attacked on these people, and in this incident about 100 workers were killed and 300 wounded. Because of this incident, when hundreds of people were killed, this is known as Bloody Sunday event, because it happened on Sunday. It is known as Bloody Sunday or 1905 revolution. As you all know that when this massacre, one of the another terminology I may say, in which people were killed mercilessly. So in this 1905, when hundreds of people were killed, means Tsar, he was forced to elect one consultative parliament called Duma, because strikes took place in the country. People raised their slogans for their rights. Tsar was bound, he was forced to create one Duma. Duma refers to parliament. Just like in our country we are using the terminology parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, elected representatives. In Japan it is known as Diet. In America it is known as Congress. So Duma was appointed. Although after 75 days, means 2.5 months only, Tsar Nicholas, he re-elected all the members, and those who were loyal to the king, they were given the chargeship of this Duma. Next we have the First World War and the Russian Empire. As you all know that in 1914 First World War began. I will not go in deep about this First World War, but let me tell you that First World War incident took place in 1914 when one student of Serbia, he killed Austrian prince. Ultimately, two groups were formed. One side there was Britain, France, Serbia and other countries, and the another side Austria, Hungary, Germany, Turkey and other countries. So on 28th of June 1914 this First World War began, and after this World War a humiliation treaty was signed. As you all know that in this World War Russia also involved. Although there was no logic of involvement of Russia in this First World War, it has, you can say, no participation, but to get name and fame and the feeling of this aggression to get the states after the victory, Russian Tsar involved Russia in First World War as an allied power along with Britain and France. And in this First World War many Russian soldiers died. Here are some data that there were over 7 million casualties by 1917. Means from 1914 to 1917, 7 million. 1 million is equivalent to 10 lakhs. Means 70 lakh people died by 1917. On the other hand, in during this period, Russian Empress Tsarina Alexandra, means who was an German origin, means She was under the influence of Rasputin, a monk who was very, very unpopular, and she also interfered in the politics of Russia. So people, they were not happy with the decision taken by Tsar Nicholas II. They believed that because of the lack of farsightedness, 7 million casualties took place in Russia because of the poor decision taken by Tsar. Even when the armies returned or retreated back, they destroyed crops, buildings, and many other livestock. So there were severe impacts of this First World War on Russian industries, Russian agriculture, Russian economy, even on the lives of the people. You may say that it was not a good decision of Russian Tsar Nicholas II. Ultimately, people, they rebelled against him. In 1917, here the major incident or the event of Russian Revolution has begun. It has started now. Two revolutions took place in Russia. One in Feb Revolution or February Revolution in Petrograd, and the another revolution is in October. So these two revolutions I am discussing step by step. Keep watching and listening this video. In 1917, when there was shortage of food because of the First World War and other involvements, workers, they had no facilities. Economic condition of Russia was not good. That time, on 22nd Feb, I'm coming to the important date of this Russian Revolution. On 22nd Feb, a lockout took place at factories on the, you can say, in the Petrograd city. Next day, workers in around 50 factories, they called a strike. In many factories, women, they led the way to strike, which is called International Women Day. Generally, we celebrate on 8th of March. In Russia, there was Gregorian calendar, which was, you can say, many days behind the international calendar. Hence, this incident took place in Feb. As per the international calendar, this incident was in March, but as per the Russian calendar, it was in Feb. That's why this revolution is also known as Feb Revolution. As we are having many calendars in our country, main one international calendar we are following. Apart from that, Shak Samvat calendar, Vikrami Samvat calendar, Gupta era calendar, means these calendars are there. So in the same way, people, they marched, demonstrated workers, they crossed from the factory quarters to the center of the capital, the Nevsky Prospect. They were supported by many laborers, workers, and other people. Government imposed curfew in the country. In the state, curfew was imposed. Demonstrators, they were dispersed by the evening, but they returned back on 24th and 25th Feb. And government, here government refers to king. He called cavalry and the police to keep an eye on these people. Meanwhile, these incidents begin in Russia because of the shortage of food and the poor economic condition. Ultimately, on 25th Feb, government suspended Duma. Duma means that parliament which was formed in 1905, that was suspended. Demonstrators, they returned in force to the streets of the left bank, and on 27th of Feb, police headquarters, they were attacked. Streets thronged with the slogans about bread, wages, betterers, and democracy. Means they demanded their bread, wages, and democratic ideas. The government tried to control the situation but failed. This time means they failed. Even an officer was shot. He was shot at the barracks of the regiment. And 3 other regiments were mutinied. Mutinied, here it refers that soldiers of the regiments, they also revolted against the Tsar. By the evening, they gathered to form a Soviet. Here you can see in these slides we have discussed about the lockout and the strike and suspension of Duma by the government or the king. These are the recapitulation points. The main slogans by the people were bread, wages, better hours, and democracy. And people, they gathered, means the workers, they gathered and formed a Soviet. This Soviet word refers to workers' union or the council of the people. One delegation went to meet Tsar Nicholas II. Delegation means group of people. Military commanders of Russia, they advised Tsar Nicholas II to flee away from the country or to abdicate from the nation. And he followed their advice, having fear in the mind, because he knew very well that people, they could kill him like French ruler Louis XVI and his wife. So he fled away from the nation, and ultimately it was the victory of the people, and provisional government was formed in Russia. In simple words, this was the end of monarchy. This was the end of kingship. This was the end of old regime or a beginning of new era in Russia. I hope that you understood all these points. It is not very easy to understand this topic or the events of Feb Revolution, but if you will concentrate and focus, if you will recapitulate, and you will see that how people, they marched towards the Winter Palace, how they demonstrated, and how the king was given advice by his military commander to evacuate from the country, how he fled away, and ultimately a provisional government was formed. This government was formed by Mensheviks. As I told you in the beginning slides, that there were 2 main parties, socialist parties in Russia. One was Socialist Party, one was Bolshevik, which was a majority party, Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party. Mensheviks was the minority party. So provisional government was formed by the Mensheviks. Till now, Bolsheviks had no role in government. Means they were not active, because their leader Lenin, he was not present in Russia. So after Feb Revolution, Lenin returned back. He came from his exile in April. When he returned, he opposed the war. And he felt that this is the time for Soviets to take over the power. Meanwhile, these social organizations or the group of laborers or the socialist people, they must take power in their hands. and Lenin demanded three major demands which are called April theses. These demands are war to be closed, meanwhile First World War has to be closed, or Russia has to be withdrawn from the war, number one. Secondly, land to be transferred to the peasants. Land of the state has to be given to the farmers. And the third, banks to be nationalized. There has to be nationalization of bank instead of private banks. So people got attracted by these demands of Lenin, and Bolshevik party members, they got united under the leadership of Lenin. They demanded that this is the time to get united and get the rights of the country. Ultimately, they renamed themselves as a communist party. Communist party. Okay. In country, Bolshevik leaders, they got the support of many other groups, social groups also. This time, provisional government under the leadership of Menshevik was not able to fulfill the demand of the people, because people, they had more expectations. They wanted to get more power, liberty. They had an expectation of liberty, equality and complete democratic ideas, means which could not be possible immediately, because they were opposed by the Tsarists, pro-Tsarist people, conservative people. That is why civil war began in that period. Lenin was supported by army and many other, you can say, revolutionary committees. Here you can see that on 16th of October 1917, Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and the Bolshevik party to agree to a socialist seizure of power. Meanwhile, now they decided to seize the power or take power in their hands from these Mensheviks. A military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviets under Trotsky to organize the seizure. Seizure, meanwhile, here it refers to get the power of the state. The uprising began on 24th of October, and the Prime Minister Kerensky, who was the Prime Minister at that time in the Provisional Government, leader of the Mensheviks, means he had left the city to summon the troops, and by evening, you can say, Bolsheviks, they seized some of the power. Pro-government troops, they were sent to take over telephone and telegraph offices and the and to protect the Winter Palace. The military revolutionary committee, they ordered supporters to seize the government offices and arrest the ministers. Meanwhile, again there was a protest or the revolution for changing the order of this provisional government into a socialist government. A ship, Aurora, name of the ship, that sailed the Winter Palace, means towards that Winter Palace, and other vessels also sailed down the Neva and took over various military points. Means the country or the main headquarters of provisional government were taken under their control by these Bolsheviks. Ultimately, Bolshevik ministers got the power, and Mensheviks or the provisional government surrendered. Bolsheviks, they controlled the Moscow and Petrograd areas by December. Means in few days only they controlled entire Russia. Bolshevik Party, as I told you, that it was renamed as Russian Communist Party. Here we have one important slide. What changed after October? This is very important from examination point of view. Meanwhile, what were the consequences of Russian Revolution, or what were the aftermaths of Russian Revolution? What were the results of Russian Revolution or this October Revolution? So in results, you may simply say that end of monarchy or this old regime, establishment of socialist ideas in Russia. Banks, as I told you in one of the previous slide, that April thesis of Lenin, that banks were nationalized. Land and property means that was given to the state. Peasants, they became the landowners. They were given the land to the peasants, means that was not ownership, but they were given the land. And banks were nationalized. Immediately after this revolution, Russia withdrew from First World War in 1918. Government took over the ownership. Land was declared the social property. Peasants were allowed to seize the land of the nobility. Meanwhile, nobles or the rich people who were the owner of the land, that land was seized from them, was taken from them, and it was given to peasants. Bolsheviks, they enforced the partition of the large houses according to the family requirements. Large houses of the landowners were divided. They banned the use of old titles. All the old titles were banned. Titles here it refers that Raja Sahab, Nawab Sahab and all. New uniform was designed for the army. Even one new hat that was chosen, means that was Budaynovka, means that was chosen for the Russian soldiers. As you know that Russia is in the cold region. Even the Bolshevik Party, as we have earlier also discussed, that it was renamed as Russian Communist Party, and Russian government tried to held an election, but they failed. But Bolsheviks, they took command in their hands. Lenin, he dismissed the assembly for the time being, because he knew very well that it is very very difficult to establish democracy. That's why some strict measures were taken. Here Bolshevik Party, that became the only party in the Russia and participated in the elections as All Russian Congress of Soviets, which became the parliament of the nation later on. Russia became one party state. Many young writers, artists, means they rallied to party because it stood for the socialism and change. Means they were given the responsibility to aware people about the socialism, about the social ideas. Social ideas here it refers that who believed in Marxist theories. And what was the Marxist theory? That land and property must come under the control of the state. It should not be a private property. When Bolsheviks, they took command, there was civil war in Russia. Although before that, let me tell you one or two another important terms, that in Russia there was one secret police called Cheka. Cheka was the Cheka. Cheka was the secret police, and OGPU and NKVD, this was also a secret police. So civil war began. Why the civil war began? Civil war began, here it refers that internal disturbance in the nation. The reason was that the people who were enjoying the power from last many decades and centuries, they were not ready to leave their powers. When land was redistributed, at that time Russian soldiers, they returned back to their home in the need of their land. Soldiers, they had desire to go home for the land. Non-Bolsheviks, socialists, liberals and the supporters of the autocracy, they condemned the Bolshevik uprising. Here I am showing you some of the important terminologies in Russia which was during the civil war. Number one is the Reds. Reds refers to the terminology. Reds means the Bolshevik. They were called Red. Greens, they were socialist revolutionaries. Whites means pro-Tsarists who controlled most of the Russian Empire. So these whites or pro-Tsarists, meanwhile those who were enjoying power from last many years, they took harsh steps because they had power that time and punished some of the peasants. But under the command and control of Lenin, means all these were punished and the land was distributed, and Russia, it became USSR, United Soviet Socialist Russia, a powerful nation after the First World War. And how it became powerful means which changes came in Russia immediately after this Bolshevik revolution. These are the changes as promised by Lenin in his April thesis number 1. Banks were nationalized, industries were nationalized, they permitted peasants to cultivate the land. This was one of the important steps taken by Russian authority that time, that land was given to peasants. A centralized planning system that was introduced. As you all know that in our country also we are having 5-year plans. So in the same way in Russian society too, 5 years plan that was adopted by Russian people, Russian government. And the purpose of these 5-year plans was to make Russia a strong and powerful nation, because till 1917 a country which was considered a poor nation, which was defeated by Japan, after this First World War it emerged as a superpower nation. Only America and Russia, these two nations became powerful countries after the Second World War, even after the First World War too. Schooling system was developed. Creches here it refers that area which was established in the factories for the children of the women workers, means where these children they could get some facilities, health care, some education type. Model living quarters were set up for the workers. For the workers means some steps were taken to improve their health condition. Even some steps were taken to improve the condition of the laborers. After the death of Lenin, another part of this chapter is related to Stalinism and collectivization. This is last topic of this chapter. Keep listening this video so that you can understand the entire topic easily. Stalin, he led the party after the death of Lenin. Towns in Russia, in Soviet Russia, they were facing acute problem of grain in 1927-28, because this was the period of economic crisis. Economic depression came in the world in 1920-1929. If you are aware that after the First World War, most of the countries they faced economic crisis because of the overgrazing, overpopulation, because of the demand of money and loan amount from America or so. These are some of the basic reasons. the government fixed prices at which grain must be sold. Government fixed the prices. Farmers, they refused to sell their grain to the buyers because of the low prices, means they denied the orders of the Stalin. Ultimately, Stalin introduced emergency in the country. He believed that these rich peasants, they are creating the problem, they are having holding of the stock. That is why he ordered to raid these kolkas, or the rich peasants, or the well-to-do peasants. Means these stockholders were raided, their granaries were attacked, their grain was plundered. In 1928, Stalin took a decision of collective farms, means a large farm to the farmers, which is known as collectivization, in which farmers, they could do work as per their requirements. In spite of giving small holdings, he felt that small holding system introduced by Lenin, that was not beneficial for them. That is why he distributed the land, means large farms, to the people or the farmers in group. Although it was opposed in the beginning. Most of the farmers, they denied to accept. Ultimately, he took harsh step or very strict steps to control these farmers, and forcefully, means these collective farms, or this is known as kolkhoz. Here you can see in this slide, KOLKHOG or Z. So these kolkhoz, means these collective farms were made up for the farmers. Stalin government, means tried to impose this collectivization farm on the farmers. So peasants, they were not ready to accept this because they were happy with their small holdings. They were not ready to work together in the collective farms. Ultimately, from 1929 to 31, 1/3 cattle of Russia died. Means 1/3 animals died. Those who resisted, means those who protested this collectivization farm, they were severely punished, and many were exiled from the nation. They were sent to other nations because they were not ready to accept the demand, or they were not ready to give these ready to accept the instructions of Stalin. Although some were allowed to do independent cultivation, Stalin government also was, you can say, forced and bound to accept some farmers as an independent cultivators, although they were treated very unsympathetically. They were not given any mercy or kindness. After a short span of period, they also accepted this. Okay, here is the aftermaths or the global influence of Russian Revolution. Means what were the effects of this Russian Revolution on the world, entire world, means which is also called aftermaths or results. That after this revolution, means as you know that we have discussed in the previous slides also, that monarchy ended. It was the beginning of new era. New rights were given to people. Democratic ideas came in Russia. Socialism was established in Russia. Although because of the bad harvest from 1930 to 1933, means because of the bad harvest and famine, means over 4 million people, they died. Stalin, he charged these critic people, means he took very hard step, far strict steps to these people, and Russia, it became a powerful nation after the First World War because of steps taken by Lenin and Stalin. Bolsheviks, they were encouraged colonial people to follow their experiments. Non-Russians from outside the USSR, they participated in the conferences of the people in the East. Bolshevik, they founded Comintern. One of the important term I'm telling you, that Comintern was found, an international union of pro-Bolshevik socialist parties. This was founded after this revolution. Outsiders, they received education in USSR, communist universities of the workers of the East. Russia became a great power. These are the recapitulation of the points that after this revolution, Russia became a superpower nation like America, United States of America. Industries and agriculture of Russia developed. Though it denied the essential freedoms to the citizens in the beginning, but developmental projects means passed in Russia, and now Russia is one of the powerful country in the world. I hope that before ending this session or this slide, I must recapitulate some of the points that Russia, which was a monarchy state which had kingship before 1917, means its old regime or that monarchy was changed or replaced by the socialist ideas. I hope that I tried to make all the points of this chapter clear to you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.